How many people could say that they got to go through high school playing in bands and being close friends with future rock stars? I can. And today's video is going to be an absolute blast as we revisit some of my teenage years. And you're not going to believe some of the stories I share playing in bands with none other than Wes Borland and John Otto from the group Limp Bizkit. Yep, that's me right there in the midst of the high school music scene. All right, let me take you back to those unforgettable early days. I first met Wes and John at Douglas Anderson School of the Arts in Jacksonville, Florida. Well, Douglas Anderson is one of those high schools that's an arts high school, meaning you have to audition to get in for your art area. And I was there for guitar, John was there for percussion, and Wes was there for visual arts. All three of us love metal. And of course, we all had big dreams of being rock stars one day. Otto was in this band called Panic, I remember, and both me and Wes were currently looking for other musicians at the school that we could jam with and hopefully form our own bands. And the cool thing about back in the early 90s was there was no shortage of musicians. There was guys and girls that were playing guitar, drums, bass, there were singers, there were keyboardists. I mean, it was just an amazing time to be a young musician back then. Now, Panic already had a guitarist. However, after some time, the guitarist moved and had to leave the band, of course. And they asked me if I'd be interested in joining. And of course, I accepted the offer. Around the same time, Wes had formed his own group called Undermutt. And Undermutt, I think, was like a play on the name Underdog, which was a cartoon from the 1970s. Now, I remember Wes had his own unique guitar riffs that were a heavy influence of the metal music of the period, such as Metallica, Megadeth, and Pantera. But the original riffs that he was creating even back then hinted at the genius to come. Now, when I first got the opportunity to play with John Otto and Panic, I knew I was in a great band because when I heard him play the drums for the first time, I was completely blown away by how good he was at such a young age. I mean, he was just like a little monster on the drums, and he was taking lessons from, I think at the time, probably the best percussion teacher in town. And even at that age, John was taking his music very, very seriously. Now, what's interesting about me and Wes was we were actually taking guitar lessons from the same guitar teacher in town. And to this day, I'm still friends with the teacher. And I mean, the guy's still just a like big performer in town, lots of students. And we'll see if maybe we get another rock star that comes out of his guitar studio. So I remember the singer for Panic's dad, and Panic was the group me and John Otto were in. The singer's dad was a preacher, and at his church, they had a really nice parish hall. And we would routinely get to access this hall. And our bands, Panic, Wes's band Undermutt, and a few other bands, we would get to play shows there like every other month, every third month, something like that on a Friday or Saturday night. And in addition to that church hall, I believe there was another church that gave us access to play these shows. And I mean, there wasn't nothing Christian about any of this stuff that we were playing. I mean, we were playing like a lot of like Megadeth and Metallica covers and a lot of original metal type music. But we would pack these places full of kids from the surrounding high schools. And there was another couple of venues that would allow us to come in and like host these underage shows where there was no alcohol served or any smoking or anything like that. And at the time, you know, we were just a bunch of kids with big dreams, completely unaware of what the future had in store for us. Now, Panic was an eclectic mix of like metal, funk, and soul. It was kind of like a hodgepodge of different influences due to everybody in the band. But Undermutt, on the other hand, they were just straight up metal. And as you can see, here's a picture of Wes rocking out on stage with Undermutt. And I remember that guitar he had. It was like this yellow Washburn electric guitar. And yeah, it was just so cool. Now at these shows we would play, there was, like I said, a bunch of other bands that we would have come with us and play. And it was usually a great mix of styles that appealed to a wide variety of high school kids back then. And then somebody in the group would create a flyer, and they would sit there like in one of their class periods and they would draw out the flyer for the show coming up and all the band names and do their best to recreate, hand draw the band's artwork or their logo. And then we would have like somebody's parent print off like tons of flyers. And then because we knew kids at other schools that weren't going to Douglas Anderson, we would give each kid from these other neighboring schools like just a stack of these flyers, and they would hand them out around their school. So by the time the show came, we literally would have a couple hundred kids showing up, and it was pretty awesome. One of the early memories I have of John Otto was back when MTV was actually music television and they played music videos. I mean, you had like the Headbangers Ball and some other cool shows on there. John Otto would call me up on the home phone, landline now, okay? There were no cell phones back then. And he would call me up and he's like, dude, put it on MTV. Check out this new Metallica video, or check out this new group, Nirvana. Because, man, you got to learn these songs so we can play them at the next show. And, of course, I would sit there, watch the video, listen to the song, try to figure these songs out by ear. Now, you got to think, this is pre-internet, right? So we didn't have access to websites that have the tabs and stuff like that. And even though I was getting, like, guitar magazines that had transcriptions in them, a lot of those songs weren't in the magazines yet. So it would be much later before Guitar World or Guitar for the Practicing Musician, whatever, might have the tabs for a song in there. So I remember a couple of times where Wes had copied some cassette tapes for me from some new bands that he had just heard that had come out. And I remember one of them was Tool's Undertow album, and the other was Rage Against the Machine's first album. And at that point, I could see the style of music that was really speaking to Wes. It was more of that heavy, kind of detuned guitars, as well as I think he loved the way that Rage Against the Machine, their sound with, the singer and the way he would rap and sing at the same time. And then, of course, Tom Morello's guitar riffs, Adam Jones's guitar riffs from Tool. And then when he'd make me these tapes, I would literally listen to them in the tape player in my car on the way home. And then I would lock myself in my bedroom all weekend learning those songs. Because, of course, when Tool and Rage Against the Machine came out, nobody'd heard nothing like that before. I mean, we were coming off of this, like alternative music era. You had like this grunge sound going on, and everybody all of a sudden's into Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Smashing Pumpkins and Nirvana and stuff like that, which, don't get me wrong, that was some really great stuff. But then the heavier stuff started coming onto the scene, and I think that just really spoke to Wes. Both Wes and John were two of the nicest and coolest kids I knew growing up in high school. I'm definitely honored that I got the opportunity to not only become friends with them, but play music with them as well. So let's fast forward a few years after high school. John and Wes had teamed up with a guy named Fred Durst. I remember seeing newspaper articles about them playing in town, and occasionally the local news would show like a little clip of them playing, saying that this band called Limp Bizkit was, right on the edge of getting famous. And I remember at the time, I was going to school for jazz guitar. I was already in college for jazz guitar. And I was getting more and more into like jazz and fusion and instrumental type music. And of course the saying with that is a jazz guitar player plays 10,000 chords in front of 3 people, whereas the rock guitar player plays 3 chords in front of 10,000 people. So I was just in the wrong niche, to be honest. Either way, it was really exciting to see my friends and former bandmates carving out their niche and getting so close to getting signed to a record label. I remember one day I just happened to turn it on MTV, and there they are. They got a music video on MTV. So somewhere in the mix, I had kind of fallen out of communication with them, and I didn't realize they had gotten signed to a record label. And then not only did they have a video I think it was like Counterfeit or something like that off their first album. And then they were playing at the MTV Music Awards. And I remember Metallica sitting in the front row right there, like, you know, checking them out and digging what they're playing. You know, I was thinking that honestly, I was so blown away that they made it. They were taking the music world by storm. I mean, it's surreal to think that the kids I played music with just a few years earlier had gone on to become legit rock stars. And I just couldn't be prouder of those guys. In 2001, Wes Borland left Limp Bizkit, citing creative differences, and as a result, left the future of Limp Bizkit questionable. Shortly thereafter, the band went on a nationwide tour looking for a suitable replacement guitarist. And I remember reaching out to John Otto saying, hey man, I'd like to audition for LB. And he said, cool, we'll be in Jacksonville on such and such date. He goes, just don't show up playing any of that Steve Vai shit. So the day the audition came, I arrived at the building in downtown Jacksonville. They were holding the auditions at probably around like 5:30 or 6 a.m. And I remember the line of guitar players wrapped around the entire city block. There was at least 1,000 guitar players there hoping that they would be called the next guitarist for Limp Bizkit. Every person auditioning was given 1 minute, and they had to create a demo and mail that in to them before the audition. So I wrote and recorded my demo, mailed it off, got my 1 minute. The end of that 1 minute, the guy's like, great, thanks for coming out, next. So reflecting on those days, it's incredible to see how far we've all come. It's a testament to the dedication that we had for music at such an early age. While Wes and John could see a future in that style of music, I was getting more and more into the jazz-based stuff and ended up becoming a music educator. And while I may not be on the big stage alongside them, the memories and the music that we created at such an early age will always hold a special place in my heart. All right, y'all, that's it for today's trip down memory lane. I hope you enjoyed this nostalgic journey with me. And don't forget to hit that thumbs up on it and that subscribe button. And hey, if you have any questions or comments on anything I shared with you today, drop those down below, including if you've got stories of your own, knowing rock stars, or heck, even your stories with John or Wes. And until next time, I'll see you guys later, and keep rocking on.